Hi, my name is Mark Biernat. I'm a monetary economist, and in this video, I want to talk about Russian economic growth, GDP. IMF is coming out with reports that they're growing faster than anybody in the developed world, and why I think this is interesting news. In fact, in some ways, it's good news, because the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And first thing you'd have to know, it's a very important point, is it's coming out of the IMF, a group of PhDs, piled higher and deeper. And I worked in investment banks much of my life, investment banks, and I knew the top guys. I kind of was a pretty top guy. And I would go into their offices and they'd be looking at data. But mostly I knew this one guy who was the prognosticator of economic forecasts and analysis. And he'd always be looking at his hands. He'd always just be looking at his hands. And maybe he'd come up with a number very similar. If it was 3.2 last year, it'd be 3.1 this year. Wasn't much change in there. Not a lot of thought going into it. And I know these guys have aggregated time series data models, and they're actually trying to be official. And it was down a lot in Russia, and now it's up because of the relative difference. But I'm going to tell you the secret of why you can't believe these numbers, besides the pile higher and deeper aspect, and is this. GDP is a very imprecise, incorrect, aggregated data. Correct data should measure the total quality of life in a particular country. The total quality of life has indicators like I've mentioned, life expectancy, healthcare, what you can actually get and buy in a country. And GDP is really just a Keynesian formula of Y equals C plus I plus G. When you aggregate these numbers in Russia, it's all going into G, and it's going into non-productive assets, such as flamethrowers. Where if you have another country, let's call it Marklandia, I would produce I would consume something like educational games, and produce something like 3D printers. So even if Russia is increasing faster than I am, what are they increasing in? Flamethrowers? Unproductive assets that's going to be disposed and makes everybody poor and bad and unhappy. Where my country, everybody's participating in real growth, investment, and capital goods and consumption goods. Let me phrase it in another way. I live in Florida. Down, stone's throw away. It's a funny thing in Florida. You have rich people, poor people, middle-class people, all kind of crammed in by the coast. Everybody likes to go to the beach. I go surfing 4 days out of 5. And this guy I know is living in a rundown, falling apart mobile home. It's a double wide. If you know what a double wide is, I'm happy. Okay? It's a double wide. And he spends a lot of money on tonic water and some derivative of potato water, in quotes. Now, next year, he's projected to spend, let's say, 50% more on that potato water. And that's most of his national budget and income. Because isn't that what GDP is? It's an aggregation of expenditures, of final goods purchased. And I don't want to get into the textbook aberrations or definitions, but that essentially is what it is. So are you telling me I'm spending, let's say, 25% more on datil pepper growth? You can look up what datil peppers are, datil pepper St. Augustine, and he's spending it on a derivative of potato water. Are you telling me his economy is growing robustly and healthy and better than the millionaire's house by the beach? Just because of the percentage growth of his potato water habit. And that is Russia. They're spending it all not only on potato water, but ridiculous things on the Eastern Front in geopolitical struggles. So they're getting lulled into this sense of, we're doing okay, we're doing great. And when the monetary crisis comes and hits, it's going to hit so hard, they're not even going to know what hit them. And everybody will be like, whoops, we didn't see that, because that's the way every crisis is. So when the World Bank or the IMF, and it's circulated by Gen Z journalists and bloggers writing for these newspapers just to get their out interpretation, they're not economists. And the economists out there, they're usually Keynesian and aggregated data they deal with. They're not looking at the microeconomic aspects of life on a day-to-day. Is it an investment in capital goods, productive capital goods, like a 3D printer, or is it invested in a flamethrower? That's the simple answer, and that's what you need to know when you're analyzing Russia. The whole thing is a koshmar. My name is Mark Biernot, and I'm a monetary economist. Thank you very much.